Good evening and welcome to MTV Community Forum for 19th of March. I'm your host, Byron Campbell, and our co-host, Chris Diali. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Byron. Good evening to our listeners and viewers. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Chris, the first thing I want to review is that we have a special guest tonight. We have Honorable Emmalin Pierre. She is His Majesty, you call it? Leader of the opposition. And leader of the NNP, and we'll be having a very interesting conversation. And we have a lot to cover in this segment, so we're going to have a shortened chit-chat section, okay? Chris, do we have a shortage of asphalt in Grenada? I heard the Prime Minister saying so, but then I heard CCC, the contractor, saying no, we have no shortages, we have ample supplies, we have new equipment, we could do the job. So, do we have a shortage?
I don't know, because Molyneux Road didn't finish yet.
Okay.
That would be my answer to it.
Fine. Chris, I'll move to the next subject. Look, Trump 2.0, there's always something happening. And one of the things we learned, Chris, is that beginning now or soon, that Chinese merchant ship docking in the United States will be subject to huge fines. To what extent, or levies, to what extent this has implications for us in the Caribbean, in Grenada, because that's an additional cost. A lot of our goods come from China, comes through the United States. Yeah,
it is a worrying thing, and this is from what we've been picking up. Trump 2.0 intends to implement this in April, not too far from
next month.
Next month. And the implications for us is that a couple of things. The size of those container ships could only dock in certain harbors because of their size, their sheer size. In the Caribbean, we have no port that could facilitate them. So they go through Miami and they go through other areas. They have recently started going through South or Central America because they have the docking facilities. What that does, Trump government plans to implement $1.5 million to $1.5 million levy on ships that have been manufactured out of China, so built out of China, and come into port in the U.S. And I suspect the Chinese will find a way around it and go to Central America and so on. But that has the potential to increase freight rates for us in the Caribbean by 50 to 60%.
Whoa.
Because our shippers in the Caribbean are primarily shippers like Tropical and Kajima and so on, and Geese, and their ships our docks could facilitate their size ships. So imagine that these boats were to go to the US and charge this fine, they will transfer it and transfer it to us. So our freight rates have a potential of increasing even beyond the levels we saw in COVID if this happens and this goes through and Trump goes through this. So it's a serious concern. And the shipping yards in the US, it takes them 7+ years to build a ship, whereas in China it's 2 years, technology and robotics and so on. So the Chinese are way ahead. So the issue is, could we start looking at South-South relations and see how these ships could bring our containers through South America and so on? But we still will have an increased cost because the route is going to be longer, and we're going to take longer times to get goods into our country. So here's another point of possible imported inflation.
So we should note that. Chris, there's an issue regarding retirees or NIS payments to seniors, the retirees. And I believe the issue has to do with when you attain age 60 or you retired, NIS, there are ways and means where NIS can in fact withhold or suspend payments to you. What do you know about this?
It recently happened that NIS have been advising some people who have already start receiving retirement benefits from NIS. And they are writing people indicating that if you're 60% above your threshold, that they will suspend benefits to yourself. What that means is that if you retired and you start receiving benefits from NIS, and you get a job somewhere else, because what you're receiving from NIS probably can't maintain your lifestyle or whatever it is, and that money you're getting from that job seems to be 60% more than your threshold, they're suspending payments to you. And I find that to be somewhat disingenuous.
Punitive in a way.
And here you are, you're working for 30, 40 years, you make how much $1 million to NIS in contribution, you now start to get benefits, and they're telling you if you have a job, or Byron, you but to go, you are a retired man receiving benefits from
Yes,
INS, so if you get a contract to do something and it's 60% above your threshold, they're going
They
to tell
could
you
suspend your payments.
your payments. I mean, I think NIS have to
We need to look more in that.
bring
Chris,
them here to explain these things.
Chris, we couldn't go forward without bringing to the fore what's taking place in Gaza, this new onslaught that's taking place. We learned that from since Tuesday night with the Israelis have again started bombing again Gaza. We learned in this short period, 48 hours, that over 436 Palestinians been killed, 183 of those being children. So they've resumed their bombardment. I mean, this add into the 49,000 plus that's killed, and we know some 112,000. Like the population of Grenada has been injured. We know there are thousands of trucks with medical supply, food, water at the borders, because Israeli have in fact shut down the border. Nothing can go in. So essentially, today they bomb women and children in a standpipe, you know. So it's the genocide is continuing. Of course, this is senseless. Where is it going?
Well, I don't know where it's going. Trump 2.0 said that he will have this matter resolved in short time once he comes into office. He doesn't seem to have the negotiating skills or tactics to deal with it. And the Israelis continue to do what they want to do unabated. And killing and having, well, genocide is the right word. There's no other way to put it. And they're talking about Hamas and this and that. I mean, they just want to bomb the people out of existence, in my view.
The UN projects widespread famine in a shorter order because of the cutoff of all aid. Chris, the final thing, of course, TNT election is next month. I think it's April what?
The 28th of April.
28th of April. Interesting development there. Of course, we know the current Prime Minister is not contesting. He's out.
Interesting. Stuart Young is the current Prime Minister. Well, he dissolved Parliament. Well, it'll be interesting to see how things go, because the opposition, UNC, Ms. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, says that she's ready. And, you know, this is like a snap election. Because the gentleman only held office for 1 day.
Yes, call us that. It's interesting.
And what's interesting, I think, even though you held the office of Prime Minister for 1 day, he's guaranteed a pension of $80-something thousand for the rest of his life.
I want to be that Prime Minister next year.
So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how the election goes, because, I mean, PNM have won the last two, so it will, I suppose, be record for them to go in for a third time. I mean, Trinidad have serious issues with crime and other things. The economy is not as strong as it used to be with the oil and gas.
The oil and gas sector.
So they have some issues to deal with. So let's see what happens.
Migration is a big issue there also.
So.
Okay, Chris, viewers, as we told you earlier on, we will be joined shortly by Honorable Emmalin Pierre, leader of His Majesty Opposition, political leader of the NNP. So stay with us. We'll be right back for an interesting program.
Laboratories, providing quality care and expertise. Fit for life and allied laboratories. See our in-house doctors and our pharmacies. Get expert care and quality tests. When it comes to your health, you deserve the best. Fit for life and allied laboratories. We're taking care of Grenada.
How am I supposed to finish cooking like this? I wonder if climate change is behind all these water shortages. Time to think about the future. It's really time to invest in a proper water storage tank, you know. What water tanks you guys have available?
We have 450 gallons for a family of 3, 800 gallons for a family of 5, and 1,000 gallons for a family of 7. Purchasing any of these tanks will ensure that you have enough water stored.
Don't be like me and wait until you're out of water. Be smart. Be prepared. Invest in a proper water storage tank today.
Welcome back, viewers. As we indicated earlier, our special guest joining us in studio this evening is the Honorable Emmalin Pierre, the leader of the opposition, His Majesty's opposition. So yes, Honorable Emmalin Pierre don't need much introduction. She has been a member of the NNP and has been sitting in Parliament now for a little while. And so I don't think we need to do a big introduction because we want to keep this to get as much from her in this segment as possible as we can. So, Honorable Pierre, you just finished budget. You just finished your debate in budget. What stood out for you in the debate based on what was presented by the minister? And I don't want us to go into the fracas at the end, but what stood out for you in terms of substance of what the government presented and what you were able to discern?
Well, let me first say good night to your viewers and your listeners. What stood out to me? Listening to the presentation of the Honorable Minister of Finance, quite obviously, a lot of what was presented did not connect with the actual budget document. And I always say it's not about the speech. You know, people sometimes get confused. The speech is not the important thing. What is laid and what is approved is not the speech.
Yes, correct.
It is the estimate of revenue and expenditure. And in my mind, there was a serious disconnect between the speech and the document, the estimates of revenue and expenditure. And I have to say this, I'm totally disappointed. You know, in the past, and I'm sure you can identify with this, a budget is supposed to provide inspiration. Normally, there's a measure of excitement, and if you don't want to say excitement, there's a buzz when a budget comes out. People are counting how many new jobs were promised, you know, what sectors of the productive economy is going to be boosted, where would people go from here? There was a hush after, there was a silence after this budget presentation.
One of the things that stood out to me, and I kept saying before the budget presentation, when the Parliament was opened and the Governor General presented her speech, you didn't get from that it was a clear understanding where we're going, because it was very, very skeletal and brief. So I said from then that, because that informs the budget in a big part in terms of the philosophy and the excitement as you're talking about. And because even in this presentation and the speech and the figures, there seemed to be some confusion around the debt. The Minister of Finance had a press conference and said they were looking to raise $700 and something million in various instruments and in being able to deal with what they want to deal with. Budget is presented, a deficit budget, and it says fully financed. So, I mean, there's a lot of reserves, and there seems to be some confusion around that. What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And that, for me, I would say a measure of deception, because I listened what was said from that press conference, and I followed a trend even after the presentation of the budget. And I listened to those who tried to justify. The minister was clear when he had his press conference. He was very clear. And I cannot see what could have changed so drastically within a matter of a few weeks that the situation was totally opposite. From a point of, hey, we cannot fund this budget, to a point of, don't worry, it's all covered, it's going to be good. You know, and that is concerning. Now, when you look at the figures, And probably if we start with the first gloating of the surplus that was referred to by the very minister, there's a celebration. And I actually noted some of the figures here. $1.192 billion in recurrent revenue and expenditure $1.106 billion in expenditure. And the government feels good about that. There's about $84 million in surplus.
On the recurrent side.
And that's the point. Now, if you're going to gloat about that, and I give an example to say this is like someone falling, injuring themselves, and the first person looks at them and say, oh, this is just a sprained muscle. And then you do the x-ray and take a closer look and realize it's a broken foot. And this situation, that's what it feels like to me, because you're talking about a surplus that is just a subset of the whole picture. So if you're speaking about recurrent revenue and expenditure, but you're not telling us about the full fiscal situation and the fact that we have over $300 million in deficit, to me that's misleading.
Yeah, and the other thing that I want to get your thoughts on is the capacity issue, because we have 9 months to go. The budget isn't approved yet because the Senate is still debating. So let's say it's going to get approved in April. We have 9 months to effect almost $500 million spent on capital expenditure. And I've always said that our implementation rate has been woefully under the low percentage. So do you believe that we could spend $500 million in 9 months on the projects listed based on the capacity constraints we have?
Just before answering that, I want to just backtrack a little bit, because we spoke about a $337 million deficit, but let's remind ourselves that does not include our debt. And the debt payments that we have, over $400 million. So we're in a situation that someone is trying to convince us that it's okay, and it's not okay. But on the point of implementation, you're absolutely right. And it reminds me of what happened with the supplementary budget.
Right.
If you remember all those magnificent figures and all those, magnificent projects that was supposed to be rolled out in almost maybe half of a year. And people who knew better said, this cannot work. Try to be more realistic. And this is the same situation we found ourselves in. In 2022, the government chastised our government, our administration, for poor implementation rate. I remember item by item by item, project by project by project, the implementation rate was provided. Did you hear of any implementation rates in this presentation?
No, there wasn't.
Absolutely none, not one.
And there is a concern generally about government's expenditure. Now, in previous budgets under your administration, when your party was in power, they always had a thing about cost control and cutting here, cutting this ministry, doing this. This was absent in this budget. We seem to say we're spending how much billion, but not a reflection on how we could get more efficient and cut costs. I thought that was one part of the equation that was missing.
And you see, that's one of the challenges I have, not just with this budget, but the operation of this administration. We were told in 2022, the justification for establishing a new ministry, Ministry of Implementation, was to ensure greater efficiency, exactly what you just said, greater efficiency, and to increase the implementation rate as it relates to the project. Now, the very fact that you could not indicate not one implementation rate for a project tells something. But if you look, you would see how the objective, the role of that ministry has been shifting almost every month, right? And so this efficiency that you speak about, the increased rate of implementation, this is not going to happen if this administration doesn't settle its business. More ministries doesn't mean more efficiency. It's greater wastage and mismanagement of resources.
Tell me about oil and gas, because, we have been talking about oil and gas in your administration, this administration. We seem to be getting very little information from the governments on what is happening in oil and gas. If we were to understand our potential and what is happening, then we probably wouldn't have a deficit budget, I'm just saying, from the revenues coming on the energy side. And I think I heard the Prime Minister say in his thing, somebody said that if Guyana and Suriname have and Trinidad, we must have commercially exploitable oil and gas. That is not rocket science. We have blocks that were given to the Russians. We were told recently the Russians signed with the Nigerians on some arrangement, but we're hearing very little about oil and gas. I mean, what is it about it that the public mustn't know what's going on in oil and gas? I just find it amazing.
It's probably one of the things that's on the need-to-know basis list. Now, quite obviously, there is a hush surrounding the subject. This administration, I'm quite sure, somewhere would find a contract that has been signed. The question is, what kind of engagement has happened with the contractor since this administration took office? The question is, what is the status? Yeah. Is there a minister for oil and gas as the legislation dictates? What kind of engagement has happened at the cabinet level? Where are we? There's a hush, and I wish I could help you, but I have more questions than answers on this particular subject.
It is something of this sort.
Well, I know that the Prime Minister had announced in November that he will give a report. We know that Nazem Burke is
2024.
Yeah, 2024. We know that Nazem Burke is the chairman of that commission. Silence. But the last time you were here, Honorable, was you had announced your candidacy for the leadership of the party. And here you are as the leader of the party, and we must congratulate you.
Thank you.
We know also that the recent election of the party convention was questioned by some party officials as being unconstitutional. What is your response to that?
Well, I would hate to go back there because we've moved on past convention. But to answer that question, then it means that almost every convention that the New National Party had in the past, over the last 40 years, would now be unconstitutional. Because I don't know of anything that we would have done in preparation for this convention that would make the convention unconstitutional, except you know of one.
That's fine. Look, you're succeeding Dr. Mitchell, who led the party for 40 years. What are you bringing to the table? What is different? How would you describe your leadership style?
So let me start that by saying, I consider Dr. Mitchell to be an outstanding leader. His service to this country, not just this country, the region. And if you ask me where I am, I want to build on that legacy. In other words, I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So whatever we have gained, whatever we've benefited from, whatever legacy that is there, I see myself as having an opportunity to build upon that. Quite obviously, as every human being, Dr. Mitchell would have made mistakes. Obviously, there are areas where he may not have been as strong as he probably even wanted to. I have a responsibility, therefore, whatever was strong, whatever was good, to maintain and to improve on that. Areas of weaknesses, things that probably went wrong that we could have done better, that's my responsibility to correct and to improve. As a matter of fact, I've been challenged by him. Do better than I did. And I'm prepared to do that. In terms of leadership style, I consider myself to be a leader who believes very much in transformational style, a transformational style.
Careful with that word.
That put, and that's what I was going to add the point. Now, in recent times, and I believe strongly in this, in recent times, there's been a fear of even using that word because of how much it has been watered down. But it's about how do you put people at the center of development? How do you inspire people? How do you engage people to be the best version of themselves and to contribute, in this case, the national development? So I believe we have a country that is rich in resources, particularly human resource. And I believe we have not tapped sufficiently into the skills, the passion, the energy of Grenadians. And I'm talking about all sectors, across the board, all levels. And so I want to bring a style of leadership that is very engaging, participatory. How do you get people to be at the center, as I said, but to be absolutely involved in development.
Another dimension of course, you're a woman leading a major political party in Grenada, in the region. Do you believe that this gives you any unique advantages or perspectives?
Of course.
Tell us.
And I always like to reference former President of the United States, Obama, when he spoke on female leadership. And one of his quotes, which I don't remember word for word, he said, if you take a woman and put a woman to lead in every country in the world, I think he said for 2 years, in essence, the world would be a better place. President Obama.
I don't want to agree with that.
And I think from the perspective, right, that women bring something to the table that men don't normally bring, right? And I often say it this way, who is best capable of advocating for other women and children? A man can do it, but isn't a woman better placed? But I also believe very strongly in, and I feel very strongly about this, I want to say that, equality as it relates to men and women. So I don't believe in my heart, deeply in my heart, that we need a conversation of who is better and who is best. As a matter of fact, I think it's an insult to mothers. I think it's an insult to women in general when we go down that gender road. So I don't encourage it, because I see men as having an important role to play, just as women, and respecting each other.
I want to throw that question another way to you. I agree that. I think women brings a level of detail that men can't. Even at the board level and in whatever management level they are at, they see things that in a detailed way that we don't, and that is welcomed. But Grenada is facing a crisis now with labor shortage, whether it's construction, whether it's agriculture, whether it's technical areas, hotels, wherever it is. And our women are taking the lead, right? And I have no apology for saying, and when they take the lead, they do a good job at it. So the question is, we cannot progress, or women cannot go as far as they need to without bringing the men along. Because the men is instrumental. What do you see as a possible way forward with this crisis we have in men who just lining on the blocks and just not having the right work ethic? And I have said, you know, get rid of the work permit. Let's bring people in from the region just to augment what we have to do. In any case, we need another 20,000 people in here because economically viable.
And that's why, Chris, I say I believe in equality. I don't like the gender discussion. We can push hard at women at the expense of men. So in the past, when you attended functions regionally that spoke about girls at risk and women at risk and, you know, women not having opportunities, etc., etc., most of the conversations, the discussions, you couldn't identify with. So if you take areas like Africa, for example, some areas even in the region, what was happening in Grenada, a total contrast to what was happening in other places. And so I am fearful that when we beat on this too much, one group of people get marginalized. And so my belief is that men and women must be given equal opportunities. Men and women. Women have their place and their role. Men have their place and their role together. Whether it's in the boardroom, whether it's in the home, wherever it is, we must have that equal opportunity.
I retire soon. I leave the work world, the corporate world. And in recent times, we've been looking for new people at the workplace and so on. And if I get applicants for a particular position and there are 10, 2 are men, 8 are women. Inevitably, we will take a woman. Very rare we take a man. Just recently we had a man. So it is difficult for us, and I hear a lot of talk about reform the education system based on the last report from the World Bank, and that we iterate, we enumerate, and do critically think. And you know, there's a lot of work there to be done. We're talking a lot about skills training, but vocational and skills training, you still need to critically think.
And that is why our programs must be responsive to a situation. So let's look at the budget, for example. Under youth development, a program like the Empower same issue you spoke of, young men, marginalized, young men needing that opportunity to develop their capacity, to access opportunities. Do you know that program, they would have spent about 50% less than what was budgeted, and the program was cut this year? I'm saying that to say that based on the situation, the government needs to, NGOs, whoever, the church community, everyone must be responding to the situation in question. So there was a point where we spoke about empowerment of women. And I believe a lot of energy, a lot of work went into that. But if we look at what is happening now, if you have a young lady in your house, you want to be concerned. Who is she going to be bringing home? And that is why it must never be that fight, women against men and men against women. Yeah. It must be about how do we move everyone together forward, and empower everyone to be able to make a valuable contribution to their society.
One of the things you said in the budget, you accused the government of incompetence. And you said that, and you gave the reason for that as a late budget being presented. But what for the evidence you have of incompetencies? I mean, that's a strong characterization of the government and of the budget. They gave a reason. They said, look, the reason, that's what I recall, Beryl was devastating. It affected 16% of the GDP in terms of the damage value, and therefore there was a lot of rescheduling and reformulation. So that's a reason. We have to delay the budget. We have too much to take on right now. But you come to that as incompetence.
Right. So
you don't believe that?
I couldn't excuse the government with Beryl. 16% of GDP. And they were comparing that to Ivan. 200% of GDP. So that's out of the window. You can't make that comparison. But if you look at incompetence, and that's simply being not competent. Now, if you have a budget of $1 million, let's use an example, agriculture. And in 1 year, in a productive sector that is so critical, where food security is so critical, where we face a food crisis right now, if you spend less than 50% of that budget, if you slash that budget for the new year, considering the circumstance, that has to be incompetence. What else could that be? If you have a youth development program that is providing opportunities for young people, like the Emmalin program, I would say, show your competence, improve the program, make it better. Almost 3 years. At the end of almost 3 years, you cut that program by $8 million. I can't find another adjective for that. You look at what has happened in farm roads, for example. What else could that be? $1 million allocated.
Don't
and you
look
must
at me,
have spent some 300,000 or so. I can't find another adjective for that, right? I don't want to use mismanagement, so I zero it down to incompetence. It has to be. And that is across sectors. An area like healthcare. Underspending by some $24 million.
You talk about spending. I heard you in your presentation, the start of the debate. You said that the Prime Minister accrued expenditures in excess of $2 million for travel, entertainment, and hosting, and you felt that this was abusive, this was extraordinarily high, you thought. But you're not focusing on the outcome of this expenditure, because clearly he would have gone to China, he would have signed several MOUs, he would have gone to Africa, making links with the African banks and other international African businesses and so forth. So it's premature. Isn't it premature, rather, to say that it is excessive? What position are you in to evaluate and to make this statement when you don't know the outcome?
Okay. I am speaking from the perspective. The Prime Minister chose to spend $2 million extra above what was budgeted.
This was additional. In
areas where and this does not even include what he has spent on renting a building that he does not have to stay in as a Prime Minister, because you have the Prime Minister's residence. Now,
But they said it's inadequate, but we'll come back to that. Fine, okay.
Well, I am saying this. Now,
Yeah.
people sign MOUs every day. There's no guarantee in an MOU. I don't know what we're going to get from those MOUs that have been signed. As a matter of fact, I would wait for the end of this year. Let us assess the progress, the achievements of those MOUs. And I guarantee you that they cannot justify that extra $2 million that was spent. As a matter of fact, let's just go back. MOU or not, why is it that the Prime Minister has to take 4 people to serve him on every trip? A photographer, an executive assistant, a press secretary, a chief of staff. Is that necessary? Can we afford this? Can we afford this?
Is that a fact, madam?
Do you live here?
Yes, I do, but I was not aware, Chris. That's why I'm asking you.
And that's the point I'm making. Now, if we could afford this,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah.
And the other thing about the overspending, I would have loved to see us overspend in the productive sectors, agriculture, tourism. We're underspending in all of those productive sectors. I would have loved to see us overspend in the social sectors. Healthcare, for example, which is a disaster, by the way. And we are underspending in those areas. We are cutting budgets in those areas. So
You also said that the budget lacked numbers. In other words, it talked about job creation, but it wasn't specific on the numbers. But what in the budget overall stands out for you? What are the things that you support and endorse in the budget?
quite
Well,
honestly,
yes.
quite honestly, the budget for me was uninspiring. Most of the initiatives, most of the programs there were programs that were initiated by the previous administration. So to say that you're excited, so should I say, for example, I'm excited, I'm happy for the new hospital? Let's start with that.
Yeah.
Because this is supposed to be the big ticket item in the budget. So let's use the hospital.
Yeah.
It's difficult to say I'm excited. I'm supposed to clap. I'm supposed to be happy. The groundbreaking is taking place in 2026. We should not even be talking about this. We're talking about the 2024 past year and 2025. Now,
You're talking about the health,
I'm talking about the new hospital.
Yes.
But what is even more important to note about this, which is why I'm saying it's uninspiring. It doesn't address the critical issue. It doesn't speak to rural economy. What are you going to do different for agriculture? What are you going to do to take us out of the hole we're in as it relates to healthcare? So I'm saying, if I'm excited about anything in there, it's because I've been excited about it for the last 4 or 5 years. Because there's hardly anything new that's presented in this budget. And as again, I don't want to say there isn't anything. The new hospital was presented, but not in this period. We're probably going to have some drawing. We're going to spend quite a lot, 30 million
25.
on consultancies and so on and so forth, and some very rich people are
But
going
as
to
a social
benefit.
activist yourself, in your work, in your life, the government indicating that social programs are being given priorities, and that's something that falls good with you?
I'm not seeing where is it given priority. So let's use a social program such as the what you call it, free tuition program.
Yeah.
Excellent example. That's a wonderful program.
Or the toilet program, or how's it called? It's called something else.
Yeah.
I
Right,
don't-
the housing
yeah.
program.
Housing program, yeah.
So the point I'm making is that these are programs generally that existed before. So let's pull out
Yeah.
one from
Yeah.
the bag that
Yeah.
didn't exist before, the free tuition program. Now, you take a policy position that every single child, Dialli's child, Campbell's child,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You get where I'm going with this. Everyone will receive free tuition. And I have no problem with that if we can afford it. I have no problem. Now, the child who does not have transportation, for example, cannot access this. So it's not surprising that numbers are going down. It's not surprising that a social program that's so important, you underspend
Yeah, and
in an area like that.
there's a concern that it's not extended to private schools as well. Whatever is happening there. The free books program was
Yeah.
one of those.
Yeah.
That wasn't
Yeah.
extended to private
Yeah.
institutions. So you get a concern. But I want to shift a little into more politics now. Than,
But just before you shift to politics, because this is critical. Now, another factor is not just, and I'm very reluctant to get excited about anything in that document, and I'll tell you why. If you present me with a document and you are projecting numbers for 2025, but in almost every area in 2024 you underperformed, then how do I take you serious in 2025? How do I, first quarter gone, believe that you're going to be able to deliver on this? So I'm waiting with bated breath, actually.
A good point. What is your view of the political environment going forward? We have Mr. Peter David, who is on his own. We don't know if he's coming with a new party or movement, whatever he's coming with. And NNP is in the rebuilding phase and so on. How do you see the political environment developing and changing under your leadership, of course, for the NNP, and potential risks from like a Peter David coming and splitting or dividing your base in terms of votes? How do you see this unfolding as you go forward?
So I shared my view on this publicly before. I don't see this as a threat. As a matter of fact, I don't see a third party surviving and making any serious inroads. And I'll tell you what, I love data, I love statistics, I love to look at numbers. And so far,
I've learned well from the dog.
you develop an appreciation. No, the truth is, when I say some things, I don't just say based on emotions and what I think. We have been engaging on the ground. We have been collecting data from the ground, and I feel quite confident in any statement that I made regarding this.
Right, so going forward, you don't see a threat with Mr. David at all?
Well, if I go by the definition of threat, then no, right? Absolutely not.
So then extend that now to NDC and your party's internal structure and development to contend the next election in 2 years' time, thereabout. Where are your party in terms of its development, in terms of structures and so on, to get ready for that? The Prime Minister could call election anytime, right?
Anytime, of course.
Yeah.
So post-convention, we went immediately into preparation for the next general election, putting our structures in place. And I'm feeling very confident that a lot of work is happening, some behind the scenes, some in the forefront, and our party will be ready whenever this government calls an election. As a matter of fact, I said to someone a couple of days ago, we are far better off where we are today than we were in 2022, June 2022. And we continue to build on our supporters. I believe most of our supporters are ready. We have to just ensure that
let me follow up something on
work.
what Chris said there. The last election, of course, NNP lost, your party lost, and the data shows that you would have lost because a segment of your membership, of your supporters, went to the NDC. I think the numbers were 3,600, something like that. What are you doing I know your slogan now is was a rescue mission. We need to rescue the country and all of that. But how are you gonna? What's your strategy for bringing back? Because those numbers, if we're looking at the data, would be critical for you if you're going to win, if you're going to be victorious in the next election.
So the first thing you want to ask is, why did they go, right? And if you interview a cross-section of persons who voted for NDC last election, many of them would give you the top factor as the promise of pension.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Now, most of these people, ask them right now, what is their current situation? They feel that they have been betrayed because they still will not, even those who would have matched for the 1958 pension, they will never see that under this administration. And so these persons, but let's go beyond these persons who are in the public service. Do you know that there are NNP supporters who worked outside of the public service and was voting for pension, voting for permanent, right? And so, again, going back to the numbers, going back to analyzing the situation. It's not emotions, not just talk. You know, who are they and what are they saying? I can even tell you what NDC supporters are saying right now.
So the messaging obviously was not on point from your side,
Well,
and probably more from our NDC side in getting them to convince them about this pension issue?
Well, I have to say, I mean, and this is just my personal opinion, I can't say that's the party's view, but I think this was one of the worst campaigns that we ran last election. There were a lot of things that we did not, well, most of the things that NDC promised, we did not even address it. So, for example, the issue of making everyone permanent, I mean, just think logically for just a minute.
The regularization
Just
issue.
think for a minute logically, and you would realize that this is not making a lot of sense. You tell people you're going to pay them twice a month, and you present it in a way that some people think that their salaries would now be doubled. Where are these people now? What are they saying now? And it reminds me, what I just said reminds me of a statement that was made in the budget. So the Minister for Carriacou and P.T. Martinique reported 100 plus houses are in different stages.
We have to take a short break here. We have much more to say when we return. We'll be right back.
Laboratories, providing quality care and expertise. Fit for life and allied laboratories. See our in-house doctors and our pharmacies. Get expert care and quality tests. When it comes to your health, you deserve the best. Fit for life and allied laboratories. We're taking care of Grenada.
No frills, just great prices, only at Courts. We don't just talk about it, we got it. Shop and save big on appliances, furniture, electronics, and so much more. Great deals on mattresses, plus free gift with purchase of selected Ashley items. Plus, with Ready Finance, get it now, pay later. No fine print and no tricks, only at Courts. Bringing value home. Special conditions apply. Offer runs from 25th February to 24th March 2025.
Welcome back, viewers. We're here with Honorable Emmalin Pierre, the leader of the opposition, the NNP party in Grenada. Before the break, we were talking about reasons for the loss of the election by the NNP. One of the other reasons that came forward, and there's the data, it might not be the top one, but one of them clearly coming out had to do with the leadership of the party at the time, Dr. Mitchell. You know, the data showed, and this from the analysis carried out, that people were seeking change, that the demographics in Grenada were changing, they had a younger population, and he was not connecting. Would you see the fact that he remains in the leadership of the party as a chairman, actually, what do you see continuing negative impact on the party, given what the election data showed? What's your reaction to this?
Right. So, well, first, I don't know the source of your data, so I can't comment on the data.
Okay.
But in terms of Dr. Mitchell's leadership position at this time as chairman of the party, I don't see that as an issue. As a matter of fact, I see that as a plus. Because, you see, if we look at what's happening now in government, lack of experience is critically affecting this administration. Absolutely. If an organization does not have sufficient institutional knowledge, sufficient experience to create a blend and a balance, that organization could be in trouble. And so I believe the fact that we've been able to retain leadership that has been there I mean, from the very inception in some cases, it's a plus for organization. But look at the flip side of that. Look at the number of young people that we are bringing into the organization. And so for us, transition, succession planning is a process. So we do not believe that you just throw leaders out because they become of a certain age. Like in your case, we don't need you anymore because you're past 60.
Okay.
We value experience. We value leadership that has been tried and tested. And so while those who are younger hold a certain leadership position, doesn't mean that there are others who probably are older that cannot provide support and guidance. If you want to zero that into, will these persons influence to the extent that younger leadership cannot make decisions, then I'll say to you, I'm not concerned about that, because that has been absolutely clear that we are transitioning, we are moving into a different direction as it relates to the party's history of leadership. And I feel quite respected in that regard, and I'm sure the other young people in the party would say the same thing.
Tell us, and try to be as concrete as possible. So what policies or strategies would you prioritize, I would say, to propel you or for you to become the next Grenada's Prime Minister? What exactly are you going to pursue? What strategies are you, what kind of policies can we anticipate coming up here?
I think one of the things that concerns me, and I think I'll use that as the first thing, we are becoming a society where this tribalism, partisan politics is creating a space that doesn't allow people to thrive and to flourish and to reach their fullest potential. I am determined to change that. A day when your political affiliation doesn't determine whether you're qualified for a job or not. A day when your political affiliation does not lead to victimization on the job. And so for me, I believe in a Grenada for all. A Grenada for all, meaning regardless of race, regardless of your religious belief, regardless of your political affiliation, you can feel this is home. I have shares in Grenada, Carriacou and Petit Martinique. And so a united nation for me is a priority. Ensuring that Grenadians feel that there's a stake in this for me. I want to remain here. I want to make a difference here. But also creating that enabling condition. And that's why we want to get into government, to create that enabling condition that young people no longer feel that I have to leave here to make life meaningful to me, right? So the issue of unity for me is extremely important. The issue of ensuring that people feel that Grenada is not just for a certain class or a certain group or people who have the air of certain people, but it's for every person. But also values. There's been a serious deterioration in values in our society. And so how do we still hold on to those things that really meant something to us as a people? It's frightening, some things that you see that you know it's not us. So how do you preserve what is Grenadian? How do we feel that Grenada is still Grenada? And how do we push an agenda that pushes that at the forefront? But also, we see what is happening economically. We see what's happening around us. The average man, wherever you go, the average man would tell you something has changed significantly economically since 2022. And it's not about world inflation, it's not about what's happening internationally, it's what's happening domestically. And so our policies and programs are going to be significantly focused on how do we restore a certain level of economic stability in this country? How do we give people, regardless of their level, their social class, an opportunity to thrive and to create a united, equitable society for all Grenadians?
I want to challenge you on your first one about the tribalism. And, you know, talking to politicians over the years, it starts with your own supporters.
Yeah.
Your own supporters, you know, we have this philosophy, when our party wins, it's our time now. From the support base. The question is, how do you make that shift in their minds to say that if I'm given a housing program, in your constituency, no NDC people will qualify, only NNP. How do you get your supporters to understand after the election, it's not about that, it's about Grenada and all of us. How do you make that shift in their mind that, as you say, is your priority?
So let's be honest and open here. Every party would have a following of supporters. Many of them would be the reason why you get into government, many of them. And so it is understandable, whether it's NNP or NDC, that some people feel entitled, right?
Strong word.
That's quite normal. And I believe every political party in government has a responsibility to take care of its supporters. I believe that. But not at the expense of the general society, not to the extent that the average person feels abandoned and feels that there's no hope. Let's just look at a simple example. In my constituency, we had a housing brigade program just before the election. Well, not just before the election, but that's been on for many months, in some cases more than a year. Right after the election, every single person was sent home. Every single one was sent home, right? And I'm saying, if you perceive that these people are NNP, as a matter of fact, it's good politics to keep them. It's good politics to keep them, right? You've made them stronger supporters of mine. So it would have been good politics to keep them. But secondly, we must have sufficient to be able to add to that. We need more houses built. So there was nothing wrong if you perceive that these are NNP supporters, and some of them were not. But even if you perceive that, there was an opportunity for others to be engaged of another political preference.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, some of the wastage that I see, $2 million, $4 million, travel, hosting, entertainment. Now, if we divert some of these spendings to programs like these, then maybe we don't have that situation.
To run a campaign, it has been touted that you need at least $3 million in Grenada to run a campaign. How is your war chest?
Let me put it this way. You brought me here not to disclose
No, I don't want you to
sensitive
disclose.
information of the new national party. But let me say this. I often say to persons, people who believe in Grenada, people who believe in a political organization would support.
Right, so
Let me say this.
you will have to sell.
People who
Sell the idea.
Yeah.
People, but let me say this to you. People who don't support NNP right now are coming forward to say, I am not an NNP. I don't wish to be an NNP, but I would love to finance and support the cause of the NNP. Because, not because there's a new leader and I love the new leader, because my business seemed to do far better when the NNP is in office.
Fair enough.
So I'm saying this to say I have no concern about watching
Fair
at
enough.
all.
Fair enough.
What do you want people of Grenada to know about you as a leader? But more important, that's the first part of the question. But what would you say to those who doubt your ability to bring the NNP back into power?
So let me take the latter one
Fine.
first.
Yeah.
Quite a number of people doubted whether I would even be sitting here today.
Okay.
Let's start there.
Okay, fine.
You know, a doubt is fine.
Yeah.
A doubt is fine.
Yeah.
It's okay to doubt something, anything at all. And that's not the important thing.
Right.
Is whether the person is able to deliver or not. And I challenge any person who believe that I don't have what it takes.
Okay.
Let's talk after the next general election.
Fine, good. But so the other part of the question, of course, what do you want people to know about you, Honorable Emmalin Pierre, as a leader? What do you want them to know?
For me,
what should be the expectations?
I would say two things. I believe a lot in strategic planning, right? Which is why I said to the Minister for Agriculture, The issue is not about giving out a few goats here and a few pigs here and a few rabbits here and you get excited and everybody clap.
Yeah.
What is the strategic plan for agriculture? So what is the strategic plan for Grenada? Yes, we may have the Grenada 75, working towards 75, but you see, having something on paper is one thing. A leader has to be able to cast a vision, get people excited about the vision. How many people even know what the vision is for Grenada right now? How many people can say that they're inspired by this vision? How many people want to go because this vision is going to take us somewhere? So a leader has the responsibility to not only facilitate strategic planning, but to be able to motivate followers. As a matter of fact, if you're not motivating, you're not leading. But that inspiration and motivation has to end up in a place where people are called to action and are acting. So who are these people in Grenada that are so excited about where we are now and where we are going, that they want to commit, they want to give, they want to contribute, they want to be a part of? And that is what I believe that I can bring to the table.
I want to stay on you a bit more. Some time ago, I think you announced, this is your personal life, of course, in terms of you pursuing international studies of some. Could you tell us a little about that? Where are you in your professional life? Well, you're a politician, of course, but you did inform us. I don't remember specifically, but you
I
can
think the last time I was on Facebook
yes.
for that. So when I completed my master's business administration, I went on to start a PhD, a doctoral studies. And so that focused in business administration, specializing in leadership, which was my previous specialization, leadership and innovation. And that I am still to complete. I am going to complete. I took a break during this period, but it's something I feel very passionate about. As you know, people who know me, leadership for me is a big thing, not just about theory, but it's about the practical aspect. And zeroing in on visioning, inspiration, motivation, getting the job done, casting a vision, but taking people to where
and
that
staying
vision
with leadership,
leads to.
I mean, you're pursuing as the leader of the NLP, you want to be the Prime Minister of Grenada. So if you become Prime Minister, what do you see Grenada's main priorities within CARICOM? Because at some point you will be the chairman of CARICOM. You're part of CARICOM. What would you say? What would be our main priorities there?
Well, I believe if you look at what's happening in CARICOM right now, of course, we have some serious challenges. And I'm going to speak about probably 3 areas. The issue of what are members experiencing at this time. So let's look at some of our neighbors, right? What is happening within that space in terms of how do we come together to ensure that we provide more support for some of the countries, and I'm not going to name
that's fine.
Right? How do we provide more support? A united CARICOM. We've been working at this for a long time. But a movement of people, which has been on the agenda for such a long time. Where are we heading with that? Are we very serious about it? Or has it become another talk shop? The issue of trade. How do we reduce cost by ensuring that we do more together? Are there ways that we could reduce cost? So for example, when we speak about in the medical field, for example, Dr. Modeste always speaks about a PPP, right? As it relates to medication, right? How do we find ways to work closer together to reduce cost for individuals, but at the same time provide that opportunity, economies of scale, right? But there are so many other issues as it relates to security. And I was going to speak about our borders, right? Where are we as it relates to strengthening our borders collaboratively? How do we use the resources and the strengths of one to support the other? Best practices is another. There are some excellent initiatives in some of our islands. What are we doing to partner more? What are we doing in terms of skills transfer? So where Grenada is strong, what are we doing to support Dominica? For example, what are we taking from Dominica, let's say, ecotourism, for example. There's so many things. I don't think we've capitalized sufficiently on the opportunities that we have within the region to build, to grow, and to thrive.
So, for example, the U.S. has taken a strong stance on the Cuban medical personnel working in the region and in Grenada. If you were Prime Minister, how would you navigate this issue?
And that's the point I'm making about that united approach. So you're listening Prime Minister A making a very strong statement here, and then Prime Minister B making a watered down statement. So you're not even sure where is the region on this. Unity is strength. If one country is standing up, so you have one big bad wolf saying, you know, if you do this, I'm going to do that. What about if we come together and have one united position? And not just have a position on paper, because we've seen positions on Haiti. We've seen positions on Cuba. Where have those positions gone? And that's what I'm saying. It's not just about a vision. It's not just about casting a vision. It's not even about having a plan, but the implementation of that plan, results, I think is so important. So if we look back, what has CARICOM said it was going to do in the last 50 years, 15 years, 20 years?
But one of these it said, for example, it said
them.
in 2025 it's going to reduce food imports by 25%. It hasn't happened. In fact, ours have gone up.
I think, and I mean, CARICOM Secretariat, I won't, be bashing anybody here to say that they try, but we probably need to look at the capacity of some of the institutions
Well, a big
that we
part of
set
it
up.
is the insularity of our politicians in the various islands. We say we go in for this, and then when we come home is a different.
That's another
That's
factor.
another issue. But I have
And then
one last
going back
thing
to
for
this,
you.
another issue there is the lack of consultation. So you cannot have leaders going at the regional level making commitments on behalf of the nation without even consulting with the nation. And that is one of the reasons many of these policies, many of these treaties have failed. Because we go there, we make decisions without serious consultation with people.
My final thought to you is, would you be willing to take part in a debate with your counterpart on the other side, or whoever else is vying for the next election?
Why not?
We have never had debates by our leaders. We have never been able to put hard questions to them to get answers to the public, to get an understanding of where you sit on different issues that we stated tonight. So is that something you will entertain?
I would not have an objection to that once the rules are clear, because sometimes people come into an engagement wanting to create the rules and wanting to break the rules and etc. So once we have an understanding as to what that debate is going to entail and what are the rules of the debate, no problem. And once the persons presiding over it would be fair enough, because I've seen debates where some people have the questions before to prepare, or some people have 10 minutes to answer a question and some others get cut off after 30 seconds. So once it's balanced and fair, I totally, absolutely don't have a problem with this.
Interesting. What is any final comments you'd like to make to tell our public?
So my final comment would be, first of all, to thank you for this opportunity here, and to say to the general public out there, we are probably in a very difficult time right now. We've just had a budget presented that has not inspired people, a budget that doesn't give hope to people. When we look at the performance in the last year, you're very concerned how much of what is in there will be implemented, how much of what is in there would even be considered based on what has happened. And the trend of the government to put big numbers and then slash them by 50% during the year. We are saying as an opposition that our role is to scrutinize, our role is to point out, our role is to advocate on behalf of our people. Our role is to provide alternative to what is current. And we are going to do this without fear or favor. We are going to represent our people. Whether it's at the parliament, whether it's outside of the parliament, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to the people of this country. And while we do that, we are going to be adequately preparing ourselves for an opportunity to lead this country again, to serve our people. And we are going to do this with great distinction. We are going to put all systems in place to ensure that we are going into government ready to serve, ready to build, ready to progress. And I want to make this important point. In this preparatory stage, we are going to begin the consultation. We are going to engage people in all sectors. So whether it's the business community, the religious community, farmers, fishermen, everybody, we are going to engage people in that preparatory stage for governance, because guess what? We want to govern not for ourselves. We want to govern for the people so that people would thrive. People would be better. A people's perspective to leadership.
Excellent.
And so I'm ready to serve. I'm ready to serve in that capacity.
Chris?
No, the leader of the opposition has elucidated what she wants to do. She has made it clear it's going to be people-centered. And I really would wish you all the best to get that done. Like, I think our people need to get up in the mirror and look at themselves in the mirror and say to themselves, what are we doing for our country today after elections have passed? And not about whether it's green, yellow, blue, or pink. So I admire.
Honourable Pierre, it's a pleasure having you. Thank you very much. We hope you'll come again.
Of course.
Thank you very much. Viewers, that's all the time we have. We want to thank you for spending the time with us. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.